Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here on the 6th, Tuesday, the 6th of February, 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Now, today's going to be a rant, but first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run over all of the markets and a bit of the news. So let's get started with the news first. What's going on in the world right now? Now, in my shows, years ago, back before we had a homeless crisis, I was telling you guys that homelessness was going to pick up and that there would be homeless cities. Well, it has picked up, but I got new news for you guys. This is going to do a 5 times as many as we're dealing with homeless people as we're dealing with now. The police and the administration and everything else, you know how they are now. They want to constantly try to move the homeless around, constantly trying to make new shelters, taking down their shelters, putting them someplace else, whatever. Well, it's just going to be too many to deal with, and in the end, they're gonna have to make designated areas for them because there's going to be so many of them, and this is where homeless cities. Because in my original reports, I said that there would be homeless cities, just like during the Great Depression. Hasn't come about yet because the Great Depression hasn't started yet. The greatest depression ever. The Fed is trapped. This is part of the things I might go into some of this, maybe, in my rant. I don't know. I'm going to tell you guys up front right now. I don't know what I'm going to rant about today, but I haven't got it. I haven't got a script. It's unscripted. This show is unscripted. That's why it's kind of fun to do. I try to do it all in one take every day. I don't sit there and edit it and come in front of the camera and say 10 words and then splice it together with 10 other words like a lot of these commentators do. I do one take, the whole thing, from start to finish. So today, I'm kind of interested in what I'm going to say in my rant myself. That kind of makes it fun, Anyway, we're seeing this massive increase in homelessness here in America. And it says the homeless crisis in America is set to come to a head with Supreme Court ruling as early as this spring. Well, it says at the heart of the case is the challenge by 3 homeless people that an ordinance in an Oregon town of Grants Pass that prohibits homeless people from using a blanket, using a pillow, or a cardboard box to protect themselves from the elements. So what do they want them to do? They want to have them sit out there and have the rain down right on top of them? They can't even use a cardboard box to crawl under a cardboard box? As far as I'm concerned, this just shows you how far we've come in our to stop a person from the very essence of what they need to keep themselves alive and make it illegal. It gets right down to the whole thing about, like I said, about a breathing license. In the end, they'll give all of us a breathing license in the end, and if we don't have our license up to date, they won't let us. They'll say, hey, he's breathing. How far will they go in the end? But they're the ones that are making us homeless. The people out here, 600,000 now homeless in America. Back when I did that first show, it was less than 100,000. So it's done 6 times since I did those shows. Homelessness went up actually, I think it was around 40,000 when I did my first show. Now it's 600,000. Well, I'm going to tell you what. Soon it's going to be 5 million. Take that 600,000 number and divide it into 5 million. That's what we got coming. And that's why I say we're going to have homeless cities. Now, moving on. Trump. I looked at this photo and I said, oh my goodness, it's right. It's correct. Okay, Trump's a bit older than Elvis when Elvis was taken in this photo. But he's got the same mouth, same nose. His in around his eye is almost. It's the character. His facial characteristics are very. The structure of his facial characteristics are very similar to Elvis in many ways. As far as I'm concerned, he does have that Elvis-y look to him. You know, even though I mean, how would Elvis have aged if Elvis had lived? You know, how would Elvis have looked when he got older? He might have looked, especially if his hair went gray or turned blonde. He might have looked a lot like. Anyway, what do you guys think? I think he does, especially around the mouth. He does have a very similar look to Elvis. Now, these migrants who are coming in, they've been accused in a beating of a New York City police officer, and they were arrested in Phoenix, Arizona. So they're getting around. How are they getting around so fast? Are they getting free flights or something? I don't know. What's up with this? Anyway, it says here that several of the illegal immigrants suspected of beating a New York police officer were arrested in Phoenix, Arizona. Fox News confirmed Monday night. The migrants allegedly involved in a mob beating of a New York City police officer were arrested Monday evening by ICE and Homeland Security at a Greyhound bus station. And also, they were riding a bus. There they are, sitting there. They look like they're dressed pretty neatly to me. Expensive clothes. Well, they can afford it, you know. I mean, they got what they got some sort of a credit cards or something like that. They probably all got new phones, and there they sit, the three of them, who were beating up the police officer. Probably got Rolex wristwatches or whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying, you know, there they sit, though. They've caught them. Now, guess what, guys? We got our old charts back for silver. Now, they got the newer charts for gold. I'm going to put the gold price on here today, but I like this old chart on silver. It's much easier to see where that green line is going against the black backdrop. So, yeah, great. Thumbs up, guys, for giving us the old silver chart back. That's much better. Much easier to see. It shows the last 3 days on there, too. You know, the red day being yesterday and the blue day being the day before. So silver's starting to pump back up again. 10 cents up today at $22.40. Taking a look at gold today. Gold's at it's at $2,035. It's up $10.50 today on gold. So I'm not sure. I'll tell you guys, we're right on the edge of something, right on the precipice of something really, really nasty within the financial system right now. It's got to do with the Fed being trapped. It's got a lot to do with that. What I mean by something really nasty is I know that they're out there and they say, well, the consumer's got a lot of confidence right now. Well, they can have all the confidence in the world if they don't have any money to spend. They can have as much confidence as they want. I'm going to tell you, they're manipulating all the numbers. We've really got an economy that's in a recession right now. Right now. This is why we see things like yield curve inversions and things like that. We're in a recession right now. But what they're doing is they're fudging all the numbers. The CPI, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, all of it is being manipulated. If we want to see unmanipulated numbers, we got to go to some place like Shadow Stats to try to get an idea what the real numbers would be. They used to have much more realistic numbers back in the day, you know, back before they started to do all this seasonal adjustments and stuff like that. But gold's going up right now. Well, that's good. Taking a look at the Dow today, we're up 84 points at 38,464. Which kind of surprises me considering that they're not getting their rate cuts when they expected. And the Fed's not going to be able to cut rates quickly. Everything they do right now at this point is destined to failure. They've set everything up for a failing system coming around to an election. I don't know what they're going to do to try to stimulate things to the point where it just seems to me that the economy is going to be slaughtered come the time of the election, no matter what they do. It's getting ready to take a precipice, a drop, because of what's happened. The underlying economy, see, there's a separation between the Wall Street economy and Main Street. The Main Street economy right now is really suffering, and it's going to suffer a lot worse very soon. But Main Street economy will drag down the Wall Street economy at a certain point, and that might be a delayed reaction as well. So what I'm talking about here is, as Main Street starts to collapse under the weight of the banks not lending money any longer. I mean, this is a financially driven, debt-based economy. And if you get a situation where the banks are not lending like they used to be lending, or they require a much greater amount of, like if a guy goes into the bank, he needs a loan, and they want to see X amount of collateral now to back up his loan, where maybe 2 or 3 years ago he could have waltzed in and got his loan, no questions asked, no problem. Now they say, oh, what do you got to put up for collateral? Now they'll say, because they're strained now for lending. And so ultimately he doesn't get his loan, so he's not able to improve his business or whatever, and he's not even able to keep his business running, so he might lay off 5 people. Or 10 even, small businesses. Well, what's the collateral damage of that? Because they're not going to have money to spend on other things that keep other businesses running. And what happens is it creates a cascading sort of a situation. That's where we're headed right now, into that cascading situation, a deflationary situation on Main Street. That's where we're headed right now. Now, eventually, when Main Street drops enough, it'll drag Wall Street down with it. And then we enter into the, not a recession, because like I told you, we're already in a recession. That's when we enter into a depression. Now, how are they going to get us out of that now at this point without creating hyperinflation? Well, the answer is they can't get us out of it without creating hyperinflation. And in fact, that's what they're going to have to do. The big question mark is when. It's in our future. It's not far down the line, the stuff I'm talking about. And then we get the war scenario as well. Taking a look now at crude oil is at 73.07 today. It's up 29 cents. So oil prices have been staying down. Now the bond market, we're looking at falling yields on the long end. The U.S. 10 years fell 5.6 basis points, and it sits at 4.1. And the U.S. 30 years at 4.3, and it's fell 4.1 basis points today. Now remember, I'm going to do a little bit of a rant after we do the dollar index. Not for real long, maybe, I don't know, a few minutes. We'll talk about something. 104.33 on the U.S. dollar index today. And the dollar, basically, really, it's kind of going along sideways, more or less. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, we've got a lot of problems right now. I don't know what's going on. Last night I was sitting there and I was thinking about things. And I was saying to myself, I wonder what's going on with all these people in the world. Why they have a sudden change, a shift. And they've become so, it's like they've all become aggressive all at once. Like for war and everything else. And all these problems we got coming at us from multiple different directions. A financial system based on a Ponzi scheme is slowly reaching that critical moment where it, especially with the debt is concerned, where it goes hyperbolic. It's all working on an exponential, but there's more to this than that. It's also the way our political people, people in government, the people in power have started to respond to things. It seems like ever since COVID, they just kind of take it upon themselves to make rules and measures and laws that arbitrarily they'll just come along and say, well, this is the new rule. You got to do it. You got to follow it. And also, they're very aggressive toward other nations and nation states, toward moving toward, I'll call it, it's like back before, like going back, I don't know, 5-10 years ago or whatever, people were much more passive and not so aggressive. It's like something is stimulating them to become aggressive on a wide scale. I don't know what's causing it. A number of things were running through my head last night. I was sitting there thinking about this, and I said, could it be that COVID's done something to people's brains to make them more aggressive? Now, don't laugh. Then I got thinking about the, it almost sounds funny. That's why I say don't laugh. It almost sounds funny that you'd think that, well, but there's things like people get a brain tumor or something. It can touch upon centers of their brain and makes them much more aggressive. And so I got thinking about that, and I said, well, it's probably not that. But there's other things, too, like your brain is electromagnetic. And it's tuned into the frequencies of the earth. And this is why a magnet will put it on a little piece of metal and magnetize a piece of metal and lay it on water, and it'll rotate around to the north. It'll train itself to north. But our magnetic poles are moving right now. I got thinking about that. Could it be something with the magnetics of our brain? I mean, this is why flocks of birds and stuff will migrate, and they can all find that location, that one little spot they're migrating to. It's like they got a compass inside their head. Well, in fact, they do. And we do too. We're all linked in a way, almost like a big hive of bees, humanity is. You know how bees, they can all go miles away and find the honey. It's like they can communicate to one another within the hive. Now, even though we are all separate and we're all separate intellects, it seems like behaviorally, we're all responding to some sort of something different. Something's changed. And this is what was going through my head. I was thinking about this, and it's moving us rapidly toward a worldwide war. Whatever it is, it's moving us toward a worldwide war. And I mean, if this process continues, it could end at nuclear destruction. I'm not going to put it any other way, but a lot of people aren't noticing all this stuff that's going on with the financial system, you guys are some of the privileged ones who are seeing what I'm seeing here. And you are also very brave. Even to be listening, a lot of people, I think, are ducking their head in the sand about all this. They're scared. They're scared to take in this knowledge of what's really going on. I'll tell you, it's kind of like, things like that are very frightening and scary for us. Sometimes we tend to shelter ourselves from these things instead of facing them head on. This is why I say you guys are brave, because you guys are aware of this information. You're aware of what's happening in the world, but an awful lot of people aren't. And some of them are slightly aware of it, but they're ducking from it. They're hiding their head in the sand. They want to continue on with things the way they've always been. They want to create a new normal for themselves. And in a way, this is kind of good. This is a survival technique, probably learned from thousands of years of us coping with a harsh environment when we were hunter-gatherers. Quite seriously. But hide yourself from it or not, or face it directly. It's not going to change what's happening. And what's happening right now is scary. It's very scary. It seems like we're getting on a footing, something similar to happened in the 1930s and 1940s with the Great Depression and World War II. Except the big problem with this is, back during World War II, we only had conventional weapons, except toward the end of the war we did have nuclear weapons. And they used them on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Also, at this point in time, like I said, I've said in some of my shows, that this technology, this nuclear technology, is very old. It goes back toward the end of World War II. And by 1960, they had enough nuclear weapons they could have... In fact, they had a lot more than they have now, back in the 1960s. Back during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And, you know, that's become almost ordinary. If you guys remember what the Cuban Missile Crisis was, and they said we almost went to nuclear war. Kennedy was in office at the time. I think it was Khrushchev in the Soviet Union. And what happened was the Soviet Union were stationing missiles in Cuba aimed at the United States, and they could make it to the United States in no time from Cuba. And that was a no-go. Well, this similar situation happening here. I mean, they're placing missiles in places that are close to Russia right now. And so it's very tense right now. It's more tense, actually, because it's actually ongoing war. Back during the Cuban Missile Crisis, there wasn't a war ongoing in Eastern Europe like there is now. It's very tense right now. I'm not sure where they would be in the DEFCON situation at this point. It's unclear. You know, I think they have 4 levels of DEFCON. I think it goes from DEFCON 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that's what it is. If it's not, I'm just stating that off of memory, you know. If it's not, let me know in the comments section. But each level lower, I think they start at DEFCON 4 when things are calm. Then they go down to DEFCON 3, DEFCON 2, DEFCON 1. Where are we right now? Do you guys know? Because I don't know where we are. And they don't make it public. When they get down to DEFCON 1, it means pretty much a launch is imminent. You know, is there a DEFCON 0? I guess that's after everything's exploded. I don't know. So this is the situation that's going on now, that common ordinary people are not just the elites who are building bunkers now for maybe this last 2 or 3 years. They're scared. The elites are out there. And I say elites, I'm talking about people in power, people with money. They associate with one another, and they know more of what's going on. They're not hiding from it so much. They're taking avenues and routes. One of the things is they're buying yachts, and that's not such a stupid idea, because 100% of these nuclear weapons would be all aimed at land. They're not going to aim them at the ocean. And so if you're on a yacht, say a mile or 2 or 5 miles even offshore, first off, the people who are left over alive in the aftermath could be very dangerous, and they can't get to the yacht. The yacht's offshore. And you can carry enough food and water and stuff on the yacht to last a very long period of time. And it's portable, it's movable. You can move it around, and it's not going to be underneath the nuclear bomb, because the nuclear bombs are all aimed at the land. And then they can move wherever they want with a sail. Even after it's over, they could sail someplace safe. And so it's not such a bad idea buying a yacht. And then another group of the rich people, or some of them are buying yachts, some of them are digging holes and making these expensive $1 million bunkers. And there's bunker companies in the United States right now that are absolutely making a fortune building. But now it's starting to move to the general population. People are actually starting, the first ones, people that watch my channel, Some of them live out in farms and stuff like that, and they're deciding to go out to the back 40 and take a shovel with them and some cement blocks and build themselves an underground bunker. They're starting to. It's just the beginning of that right now. And maybe they're very smart. Maybe they're very intelligent by doing so. It doesn't cost that much. And maybe it'll save their life, ultimately. Because we're headed towards something. We're headed toward very dark times indeed. And we're right on the precipice of it beginning. And you know, a lot of people are going to start to panic when it actually starts to happen. And that's not, I don't think, all that far away. And then they're going to run around like somebody with their hair on fire, not getting nothing done, because they're just so upset. And so they haven't made their preps ahead of time. They'll try to do it at the last minute, and it might be a day late and $1 short. But suffice to say, I think that what's coming very soon is going to cause a tremendous amount of fear in the people who are hiding from this right now. First off, I want to explain something to you guys. Now, this is important. You out there, the brave ones who have been listening to my show and stuff, you've been preparing yourself mentally. You know this thing's coming. You've been preparing yourself mentally and perhaps preparing yourself for quite a while now. Maybe for the last year or 2 years, you've been preparing yourself for something really bad that's coming. That's mental preparation in ahead of time. You're doing it, it's like getting a garden ready by doing the first things you got to do, you know, getting that rototiller out there and digging up the soil and removing all the weeds and everything else. It's like that's what you're doing, except to yourself. You're mentally preparing yourself for what's coming. And so when it does strike, you're going to you're not going to have your knees knocking and you're going to be more stable and more able to command yourself when it occurs. But you know, these people out here who are hiding their head in the sand, when this thing starts to break out, and it's going to, and it could break out in multiple different ways. I mean, the most likely option is you're just going to wake up some morning and the power's going to be out. But it could be different than that. It could be that there's a riot or something right in your hometown and they're burning cars in the middle of the street. But at some point, the news is going to come in. You're going to get the news of something that's going to shake you to your very core. And when that happens, these people who have not mentally prepared, they are not going to be able to cope with it properly because they haven't prepared themselves ahead of time for it. And they're basically going to be to the point of fear. Fear can reach into your soul to a certain point where it makes it so it incapacitates you. It can actually do that. And that's how frightful the things that we have coming are going to be. Look, a lot of people just had a scare just in the last week or two. When they looked in, and maybe on their favorite news program or whatever, it says Civil War in the United States in bold letters. Well, okay, it wasn't a civil war, but it was a border dispute. But what if someday you read the newspaper and it's not a false alarm? It's the real thing. What then? Are you mentally preparing yourself? So, see, there's a lot more to preparations than just putting food away and water away and stuff. That's going to give you a little bit more of a sense of security, too, than these other people who are hiding their heads in the sand. See, when it occurs, you're going to say, well, boy, I'm glad I put all that food and water away and medicine. Maybe you bought an antibiotic kit, and maybe you've got everything, vitamin C tablets and water and everything. That's going to give you a little bit more sense of security as well when it actually happens. But these poor people out there who are hiding their head in the sand when the news comes in, and they're not prepared at all for any eventuality either, because they haven't prepared, and that doesn't give them any sense of security whatsoever because they haven't got anything. man, it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks. Because they thought they were in a safe, secure world, and now the rug's been ripped right out from under their feet. Don't let that happen to you or your family. If you're watching this show, you're probably the one who has to stand up for you and your family. Because maybe the rest of your family is like these unprepared people. And when this thing hits, they're going to be so scared at that point. You might be the one that's have to be responsible for settling them down and calming them down and saying, okay, look. Put your hand on their shoulder and pet their shoulder a little bit and say, hey, look, calm down, just calm down. I've put a whole bunch of medicine away and food away and stuff. You're going to be okay. You're not going to die. And they might be hysterical because they haven't mentally prepared for this, your friends and your loved ones. But make no doubt about it, we got too many things coming at us from too many different angles. We're not going to escape them all. This is a frickin' gauntlet. We're going to get wounded in one way or another. You know, the Indians used to have to run through a gauntlet. They called it a gauntlet. That's what it was, you know. And you couldn't make it through to the other side. You know, I watched one of these shows with these guys. What's it called? Anyway, they set up a gauntlet, but they used those things that what do you call it? It was on that show Jackass, you know. They used those things, tasers, and they put them on fishing lines and had them hanging from the ceiling. And these guys had to run through there with these swinging tasers. Tasers were moving every which way. And tasers are going to get them, and you can't get through a gauntlet without getting got. It's gonna hit you, and that's the way this is, because there's so many things coming at us from so many different directions. The financial system's coming at us, the war thing's coming at us, the disease thing's coming at us. Each one of these potential, the infrastructure, the way we've arranged our society being interdependent upon everything else to function, so that everything requires the internet to function. So vulnerabilities in the internet are the first thing that these other countries will attack. So we've got so many different problems out there. Heck, just a sun flare right now, and we're going through a period of high solar activity, could cause all of this to happen, everything I'm talking about. Because when one of these things collapses, it's like a domino effect. They're all going to fall. Because they're all interdependent upon one another. The financial system is interdependent upon the war system, and the war system's dependent upon the financial system, and everything's linked together. So if you bust or tear a hole in it, you've weakened the integrity of the whole thing. The best way for me to describe this to you guys is like a soap bubble. A soap bubble can be floating in the air, so beautiful. It's beautiful. Look at it and everything else. But any weak spot in the integrity of that bubble, it just goes pop. The whole thing goes pop and it's gone. It disappears. So it's there 1 second and gone the next. And that's the way we've created our society. We've created an extremely vulnerable society to everything. It's all interdependent, interlaced. And in one way, it's kind of very resilient. But in another way, it's very fragile. And each one of these things we got coming at it it's like a soap bubble with darts flying at it. You know, darts you throw at a dartboard. And so we got they're coming directly at us. We got 5 or 6 big darts. And yeah, we could survive. They might all miss somehow, but it would be like a miracle if disease X doesn't get us, if the financial system doesn't get us, if the war doesn't get us, if they all miss. Well, we'll be the luckiest people alive. But that's typically not the way this world works. You know, I mean, we go through these periods. Maybe it's just the area of space we're going through. Maybe there's signals coming from space that affect our brain or affect the way we act. And don't laugh at that one either. Because, you know, you know what they're saying? They call a person a lunatic. Ask anybody who works in the insane asylums. My grandmother worked at a place called the Nova Scotia Hospital. And it was a mental care facility sort of thing. And on the full moon, they really act crazy on the full moon. It really affects them. But it affects all of us. But this is why they call them lunatics. Luna meaning moon. Lunatic. He's a lunatic. Is because they really get worse on the effects of gravitational pulse and stuff like that. We're all affected by the environment around us. But, you know, we're traveling through space. I think it's 7,000, is it 7,000 miles an hour or something like that? It's an incredible rate of speed we're traveling through space. Even though everything seems still and quiet on the Earth. Nothing's moving. Actually, we're moving like a rocket ship through space. And, of course, we're going to move from one area of space to another. I'm just throwing it out there, guys, but it could be something as simple as that that's causing us to go through this turbulent period, a turbulent patch. How bad could it be when we get through this to the other side? Well, worst case scenario is everybody on Earth doesn't make it. In other words, we don't survive as a species. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, I would say, with all these darts flying at us and everything, best case scenario, we lose maybe 20% of the population or something. You know, and we go through a few rough years and then we come out of it. The best case scenario. And why I say that is because with all these weather anomalies and everything else, it's going to affect food production. And best case scenario is we just kind of weather through this thing. But I can almost guarantee you this thing's going to be magnitudes worse than what we experienced in the 1930s and early 40s. Before it's over and done with. And it's going to impact every single one of you in my audience, and it's going to impact me. All in a negative way. But, you know, I hope to make it through it. I'm sure all of you guys hope to make it through it as well. Stay tuned and don't stop prepping. It's very important to do a little bit every single week so you don't get too far behind in your preps. And thank you guys for listening to my show. I really appreciate you guys out there. And we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye-bye.